Jason McCormick, a former military pilot turned peacekeeper, soared through the dark skies of the distant planet Zarthia. His ship, a sleek, silver spacecraft, hummed softly as he navigated through asteroid fields and gas clouds. This was supposed to be a routine flight, a simple mission to check on a nearby colony. But as he rounded the last cluster of asteroids, he saw something he hadn't expected, a flash of light, followed by a massive explosion. His heart raced as the trail of smoke in the sky became clearer. An alien ship had just crashed. Without hesitation, Jason punched in a new course and sped towards the wreckage. The crash site was a few kilometers away, on a barren stretch of land covered with jagged rocks. The ship had landed hard, torn apart in several places. Jason's instincts kicked in as he quickly descended and landed nearby. He had to act fast. If there were survivors, they wouldn't have much time. He jumped out of his ship and sprinted towards the wreckage. The air smelled of burning metal and ozone. Through the smoke, Jason could make out the shape of the ship, a mix of unfamiliar alien designs and markings. His mind raced, but there was no time for hesitation. He had seen enough battle to know what a crash like this could mean: danger, violence, and possible enemies. But he couldn't leave without checking for survivors. As he carefully made his way through the wreckage, Jason heard faint voices, soft, strained. They were coming from the ship's main hull. He approached cautiously, his hand on the sidearm at his hip. When he reached the hatch, he was met with the sight of 4 alien girls, unconscious and badly injured. Their skin colors were a strange blend of shimmering hues, some with scales, others with glowing tattoos etched into their bodies. One of them, with translucent wings, seemed to be the worst off, her wings twisted in an unnatural angle. Jason's heart skipped a beat. These weren't just any aliens. They were different species. And they were hurt. Without thinking twice, Jason kneeled beside the nearest girl. Her eyes fluttered open, and she gasped, as if surprised someone had found her. "Don't worry, I'm here to help," Jason said gently, his voice steady but full of urgency. He immediately got to work, checking her injuries. The wounds were deep, but nothing he couldn't handle with his medical training. He moved to the others quickly. Each of them was barely conscious, their alien features strange and beautiful, but all sharing the same pain. They were all young, perhaps in their 20s, yet each bore the marks of their battles: burns, bruises, and scratches. Jason pulled out his first aid kit and got to work. He wasn't sure what brought them here or why they were so far from any known territory, but one thing was clear: they needed help. As he treated their injuries, the alien girls began to stir. They looked at him with a mix of confusion and awe, their eyes wide, unsure of who he was or why he had come. But Jason wasn't worried. He had saved lives before. His mission was simple: help them, get them back to safety. The rest would come later. Little did Jason know, his simple act of kindness would set off a chain of events that would change not just his life, but the fate of the galaxy itself. As the last girl, with flowing golden hair and delicate antennae, opened her eyes and locked her gaze on Jason, something shifted in the air. She reached out a hand weakly, as if to thank him. But in that moment, Jason had no idea that his life was about to become infinitely more complicated. The sound of soft breathing filled the air as Jason carefully tended to the last of the 4 alien girls. They were all still recovering from the crash, their injuries now under control thanks to his quick actions. The girls lay in a makeshift shelter Jason had created using the wreckage of their ship, where he had moved them to safety. He had made sure they were comfortable and out of harm's way, though his thoughts constantly drifted to what had happened. He had saved them, but who were they? Where had they come from? And why was their ship so far from any known galaxy or space station? The first girl Jason had treated, the one with the shimmering scales, was the first to wake. Her bright green eyes fluttered open, and she stared up at him. She had a calm, otherworldly aura about her, but Jason could sense the unease in her. Where am I? Her voice was soft, yet melodic, with a strange accent he couldn't quite place. Jason leaned back, giving her space but keeping a watchful eye. You're safe now. You were in a crash, but I got you out. Can you remember what happened? He wasn't sure if she would even understand his language, but when she nodded, he felt a bit of relief. I am Zilara, she whispered. We were on a mission, but it went wrong. Jason nodded. He was no expert in alien races, but he could tell that Zilara was one of the more humanoid species, tall, elegant, with skin that shimmered like polished emerald. It made her appear almost ethereal. Before he could ask anything else, the second girl stirred. She had multiple arms and tentacles, and she slowly blinked her eyes open. Jason immediately saw the concern in her expression. She reached up and touched her head, as if to make sure everything was in place. She looked over at him, but then turned her gaze to the others. My name is Valeth, she said, her voice deeper and more commanding than Zilara's. Where are the others? Her eyes scanned the room, her tentacles curling nervously. They're here, Jason said, motioning to the other two girls. He was still trying to process everything, but he had to remain calm. These girls needed him now more than ever. The third girl, a telepathic being with soft, glowing skin, was next to wake. Her eyes were a calm purple, and Jason could feel her silent presence in his mind as she mentally reached out to him, even before speaking. Thank you for saving us, she said, her words echoing in Jason's mind. He blinked, startled. I am Serena. We owe you our lives. Jason smiled, though it felt awkward. I was just doing what needed to be done. The last girl, the one with wings, woke up more slowly. Her delicate wings were folded at her back, but Jason could see the damage that had been done to them. Her skin was a deep blue, and her eyes, when they opened, were full of confusion. Are we alive? She asked softly. What happened? Jason nodded. You're safe. You're all safe. The girls slowly gathered their bearings, exchanging glances that Jason couldn't fully understand. He realized that their connection to one another went beyond mere friendship. It was something deeper, more spiritual, perhaps even fated. The air was thick with tension as the girls quietly spoke amongst themselves in their own language, their voices soft but urgent. Jason had no idea what they were saying, but it was clear that they were forming a bond, a connection to him. As the hours passed, Jason began to feel the weight of the situation. These were not just any alien survivors. They were different. Each of them carried an aura of importance, as if they were connected to something larger than themselves, something far beyond Jason's understanding. And in that moment, he realized something he hadn't expected. He had not just saved 4 alien girls. He had unknowingly become part of something much bigger, something that would change his life forever. The days that followed the crash were a blur for Jason. The 4 alien girls, though recovering, seemed to hold something back. Their behavior was strange, at times distant, at other times intensely focused on him. Jason had saved their lives, and now they seemed to be in awe of him, as if he was something more than just a simple human. It was during one of these quiet moments, when the sun dipped low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the barren landscape, that Zilara finally spoke. Jason, she began, her voice soft. There is something you must know. Jason turned to her, sensing the seriousness in her tone. The other girls, Valeth, Serena, and the winged one, who had introduced herself as Lyra, sat quietly, watching him with a mix of curiosity and expectation. Zilara hesitated, then looked at each of the girls, as if seeking their approval. Finally, she spoke again, her words slow and deliberate. The crash was not an accident. We were sent here to find you. Jason blinked, confusion written all over his face. Find me? What do you mean? I'm just a pilot. I'm nobody special. The other girls nodded, as if they knew exactly what Zilara meant. Jason could sense that something was deeply important about this revelation, but he wasn't sure what. Zilara continued, her eyes locking onto his. Long ago, there was a prophecy, she said, her voice filled with a strange reverence. It speaks of a time when our four species would face a great threat, one that could tear apart the fabric of our civilizations. But in this prophecy, it is said that a human would save us, a human whose heart and courage would unite us. Jason's breath caught in his throat. He had heard of ancient prophecies before, but this sounded like something out of a legend. You're telling me I'm part of some prophecy? Jason asked, disbelief creeping into his voice. Zilara nodded. Yes, the prophecy foretells that a human would not only save our people, but also become the bond between us, the one who would unite our races in marriage so that we could live together in peace. Jason stared at her, trying to process her words. Wait, you mean I have to marry all of you? There was a long, uncomfortable silence. The girls looked at each other, and then back at him. Their expressions were serious, but Jason could also see something else. Hope. They didn't just see him as a savior. They saw him as their future. Valeth, the tentacled one, spoke up next. In our cultures, such a bond is sacred. It is not just about love. It is about unity, about bringing our species together for a common cause. Serena, the telepathic girl, added, the marriage is not just between you and one of us. It is between all of us. The prophecy says we are meant to share this connection. Jason was silent, trying to wrap his head around it all. 4 different species, all connected to him. The weight of the situation was overwhelming. He had never imagined that one simple act of kindness could lead to something like this. But why me? Jason asked. Why a human? There must be someone else who fits this prophecy better. Zilara shook her head. The prophecy doesn't choose based on strength or power. It chooses based on the heart. And you are the one who saved us. You are the one who showed us what true courage and selflessness mean. Jason didn't know what to say. He was just a man trying to do what was right. And now he had become part of a galactic story far bigger than anything he could have imagined. As the girls looked at him, Jason realized something. His life had just taken a turn he never expected. And he couldn't turn back. The future of 4 species, maybe even the entire galaxy, was now in his hands. Jason sat alone in the shelter, staring out at the vast, rocky landscape of Zarthia. The sun had set hours ago, and the sky was a deep purple, dotted with distant stars. The alien girls were inside, resting or talking amongst themselves. His mind, however, was racing. What had just happened? The prophecy, the strange connection between them. And now, the idea that he was somehow supposed to marry 4 alien girls. It was all too much to process. Jason wasn't the kind of man to shy away from challenges. He had served in the military, seen battles, and been a peacekeeper for years. But this was different. This was something he never could have imagined. He felt like he had been thrust into a story he didn't understand, with no clear way out. The sound of footsteps behind him broke his thoughts. He turned to find Zilara standing at the entrance of the shelter, her eyes glowing softly in the dim light. She walked towards him, her movements graceful, almost like she was floating. The other girls were nowhere to be seen, leaving them alone in the stillness of the night. Jason, Zilara said softly, sitting beside him. I know this is hard to understand, but you must believe us. The prophecy speaks of a human who will unite us. You are that human. Jason didn't respond at first. He could feel her gaze on him, but he couldn't look her in the eyes. The weight of her words hung heavily in the air between them. I don't know if I can do this, Jason finally said, his voice low. I'm just one man. I didn't ask for this responsibility. Zilara placed a hand on his arm, her touch gentle. You already did more than anyone could have expected. You saved us. You showed courage when others would have run. You have the heart to lead us. Jason shook his head. But marrying 4 different alien species, I'm not ready for something like that. I don't even know if I can handle it. It's too much. Zilara's eyes softened with understanding. I understand your fear, but you're not alone. We will be with you every step of the way. The bond we share is not just about marriage. It's about uniting our races, healing the wounds of our worlds. We are stronger together. Jason exhaled slowly, trying to calm the storm inside him. He had always been a man of logic, someone who relied on his training and instincts to guide him. But this was beyond anything he could have predicted. I don't even know who you all are, Jason admitted, his voice raw with frustration. You speak of a prophecy, but I don't understand the bigger picture. Why me? Why did I get chosen for this? Zilara's gaze became more intense. Because of your heart, Jason. You are a human, a species known for its strength and kindness. You are not afraid to protect those who cannot protect themselves. This is why the prophecy chose you. Jason looked at her, uncertainty still clouding his mind. But he could see the sincerity in her eyes. These girls, these beings from different worlds, truly believed in him. And somehow, that made him feel both comforted and terrified at the same time. I don't know what's ahead, Jason said quietly, but I'll do my best. I owe it to you all. Zilara smiled, a hint of warmth in her expression. That is all we ask. Together, we can fulfill the prophecy. Together, we can bring peace to our worlds. Jason took a deep breath. He didn't know if he was ready, but he knew one thing for sure. He couldn't back out now. His life had already changed, and there was no going back. Whether he liked it or not, the future of 4 species now rested in his hands. The following days were filled with intense discussions. Jason wasn't sure if he could fully comprehend what the alien girls were saying, but one thing was clear. His role in the prophecy was becoming more real with every passing moment. They needed him, but as much as he tried to wrap his mind around it, he still had so many questions. The 4 girls spent most of their time together, huddled in quiet conversations. Jason watched from a distance, wondering what they were planning. Every so often, one of them would look over at him, their eyes filled with both curiosity and something else, an expectation. It wasn't just about the prophecy anymore. They were counting on him. It was Zilara who finally came to him one morning. The sun was still low in the sky, casting long shadows across the barren ground. Jason was sitting outside, looking at the wreckage of the ship. He had been trying to repair the communication system, hoping to get some kind of signal, but so far, there had been no luck. Jason, Zilara called softly, walking toward him. He turned, his expression weary. Yes. We need to talk about the next step, Zilara said, her tone serious. Jason stood up, brushing the dust off his pants. All right. I'm listening. Zilara took a deep breath before speaking. The prophecy isn't just about marriage. It's about a union that will bring peace between our worlds. But before we can unite, we must first learn about each other, our cultures, our histories, our strengths, and our weaknesses. We must build trust. Jason nodded slowly. I understand that. But how do I even begin to learn all of that? I'm just one person. How can I understand so much in such a short time? Zilara smiled gently, sensing his frustration. You don't have to learn it all at once. We will help you. Each of us will share a piece of our history with you. Our cultures are different, but they are connected. You will learn what it means to be part of us, and we will learn from you. Jason exhaled deeply, feeling a strange mix of relief and pressure. He knew this was only the beginning. He wasn't sure how he was going to do it, but he also knew that these girls, these beings, believed in him. All right, he said, his voice steady despite the unease in his chest. What's the first step? Zilara smiled again, her eyes filled with warmth. The first step is understanding each other. Valeth will teach you about her people's ways. Serena will help you understand the mind connection we share, and Lyra will show you the bond between the air and sky. We will begin with small lessons, but they will build. Soon, you will understand the role you are meant to play. Jason was overwhelmed by the weight of it all, but he nodded, accepting the challenge. He had no choice. The future of these girls, their worlds, and possibly the entire galaxy now depended on him. "We will start tomorrow," Zilara added, turning to leave. Jason watched her walk away, feeling a knot in his stomach. He had always been the one who had control over his life, but now it felt like the future was being shaped by forces he didn't fully understand. He looked out over the horizon, the promise of something bigger looming in front of him. One thing was certain. He wasn't just a pilot anymore. He had a purpose, a role to play, and the path ahead was uncertain. But whatever came next, he had to face it. The prophecy had chosen him, and he could no longer deny it. Tomorrow would be the first step into a future he never could have imagined. Jason stood near the wreckage of the alien ship, his hands on his hips as he stared out at the strange world around him. The landscape of Zarthia was unlike anything he had seen before. Rolling hills of violet grass, strange stone formations, and a sky filled with two moons. It was beautiful, but Jason couldn't help feeling isolated. He was far from home, thrust into a situation that made no sense. Since the crash, Zilara and the other girls had been teaching him about their cultures. Valeth, the one with tentacles, had explained the deep connection her species had with water. Serena, the telepath, had shown him how to communicate with her without speaking. And Lyra, the one with wings, had taught him about the bond between air and the sky. Jason had learned a lot, but he also felt overwhelmed. There was so much to grasp, and the pressure was building. It wasn't just about saving them anymore. It was about bringing peace between their worlds, uniting them all through some ancient prophecy. But how could he do that? He was just a man, and this was something far beyond him. Zilara approached him, her glowing green eyes fixed on his face. "Jason," she said, her voice calm but firm. "It's time for the first test." Jason turned to face her, raising an eyebrow. "Test? What kind of test?" Zilara gave him a small smile. "A test of understanding. Each of us will challenge you in a way that helps you connect with us. It's not about winning or losing, but about learning. We need to see how well you can adapt to our ways." Jason felt a knot form in his stomach. He had only just started learning about their cultures, and now he was going to be tested. The pressure seemed to increase with every passing second. "What do I have to do?" Jason asked, his voice a little tight. Zilara gestured toward the distant hills. "Valeth will be your first challenge. You will spend the day with her, learning about her species' connection to water. You will have to face a task that tests your ability to think creatively and to adapt to the unknown." Jason nodded, though uncertainty still lingered. "All right. I'll do my best." Zilara's expression softened. "We don't expect perfection. We just need to see how you handle this." Without another word, Zilara walked away, leaving Jason standing alone. He took a deep breath and tried to calm his nerves. This was it. The first real test. He had no idea what was in store, but he knew one thing for sure. He had to do this. For them. He made his way toward the hills, where he found Valeth waiting for him. She looked at him with a serious expression, her multiple arms folded across her chest. "Ready for your first lesson?" she asked, her voice deep and commanding. Jason nodded. "I'm ready." Valeth led him to a large body of water that seemed to stretch endlessly, glowing faintly under the twin moons. The water shimmered with an unnatural beauty, and Jason couldn't help but stare in awe. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. "This is the sacred water of my people," Valeth explained. "Our connection to water is what keeps us strong. But today, you will face a challenge. You must cross the river, but it is no ordinary river. The currents are strong, and the water is deep. It will test your patience, your resourcefulness, and your ability to think beyond the obvious." Jason swallowed, the weight of her words sinking in. He looked at the river, feeling a sense of uncertainty creep up on him. He wasn't a swimmer, and this task sounded dangerous. How do I cross it? Jason asked, his voice unsure. Valeth smiled. That is for you to figure out. There are no easy answers here, but remember, the key is to work with the water, not against it. With that, she stepped aside, leaving Jason standing at the edge of the water. His mind raced as he stared at the swirling current. The pressure was on him. He had to succeed. For Zilara, for Valeth, for all of them. Jason took a deep breath, squatting down to examine the water closely. He had to be smart, to think differently. This wasn't just about strength. It was about finding a way to work with nature. He took the first step, unsure of what the next one would bring. But as he moved forward, a strange feeling of determination rose inside him. He would figure this out. The next day, Jason found himself standing in front of Serena, who was waiting for him by a small, quiet lake. The air was cool, and the sound of birds chirping filled the silence. Jason had gotten used to the strange beauty of Zarthia, but today, something felt different. Serena's presence was calm, almost ethereal, as though she wasn't fully there, but still somehow connected to everything around her. Jason, Serena said softly, her voice carrying an unusual clarity. Today we will begin your lesson in mental connection. Jason raised an eyebrow. Mental connection? You mean like reading minds? Serena smiled, her pale blue skin almost glowing in the light. Not exactly. It's more about sharing thoughts, feelings, and experiences without speaking. It's how my people communicate. We do not rely on words. We share directly. Jason felt a bit nervous. He wasn't used to the idea of linking his mind with someone else's. And how exactly do I do that? Serena held out her hand, her fingers glowing faintly. It's simple. You need to clear your thoughts and allow yourself to feel. Then, I will guide you. Jason hesitated for a moment, then took a deep breath. This wasn't going to be easy, but if he wanted to succeed, he had to give it a try. He reached out, gently placing his hand in hers. The moment his skin touched hers, a strange sensation washed over him. It wasn't physical, but it felt like something was entering his mind, like a wave of thoughts and emotions flooding his consciousness. At first, it was overwhelming. There were flashes of images, strange landscapes, alien cities, and faces he didn't recognize. Feelings of joy, fear, and sorrow came and went in an instant. Jason tried to pull back, but Serena's grip tightened, and she focused all her attention on him. Relax, she said softly. Let it flow. Don't fight it. Jason closed his eyes, breathing slowly. He tried to clear his mind, to stop the chaos of thoughts from taking over. Slowly, the images and feelings began to settle. It was as if he was watching a story unfold in his mind, a story that wasn't his own. He saw Serena as a child, playing with her people in a lush, vibrant forest. He felt her joy, the happiness of being surrounded by family. Then the scene changed, and he felt the pain of loss. Her world was dying, torn apart by conflict and war. The emotions were raw, real, and Jason could almost feel her sadness in his own heart. Then something surprising happened. As Jason allowed himself to connect with her, he began to experience his own memories through her eyes. He saw his family, his friends, and his life on Earth. The sensations were vivid, and for the first time since coming to Zarthia, he felt like someone truly understood him. The connection lasted only a few moments, but when it ended, Jason was left breathless. He stumbled back, his heart racing as if he had just run a marathon. Serena smiled at him, her expression gentle. You did well. You felt my memories, just as I felt yours. It's a powerful way of understanding each other. Jason took a moment to steady himself. That was intense. I've never experienced anything like that before. Serena nodded. The mind link can be overwhelming at first, but it's the key to understanding my people. We communicate on a deeper level, beyond words. And now you have experienced that. Jason rubbed his temples, trying to process everything. I don't know if I can do this every time. It's a lot to handle. Serena's smile softened. It will get easier with practice. The more you connect, the more natural it becomes. Jason nodded, feeling the weight of the task ahead still pressing on him. But he also felt a sense of accomplishment. He had taken the first step in truly understanding the alien girls, their worlds, and the connection that bound them all together. For the first time since arriving on Zarthia, Jason felt like he was not just a stranger in an alien world. He was becoming a part of it. The next challenge was unlike anything Jason had faced so far. The sun had just begun to set, casting a golden glow over the alien landscape. Jason stood near the edge of a vast, open field where Lyra was waiting for him. Her wings, shimmering like liquid silver in the light, fluttered gently in the evening breeze. "Ready?" Lyra asked, her voice light and almost musical, as though the wind itself carried her words. Jason nodded, still unsure what was about to happen. "I think so. What's today's lesson?" Lyra smiled softly, her large wings unfolding in a wide arc. "Today, you will learn about the bond between air and sky. My people are connected to the wind, and we use it not only to fly but to sense the world around us." Jason blinked in confusion. "What do you mean by sense the world?" Lyra's eyes sparkled with excitement. "Come, I'll show you." She gestured for him to follow her. They walked for a few minutes, the tall grass swishing as the wind blew across it. Jason couldn't help but feel a strange calm in the air. It was as if everything around him was alive. And somehow, the wind was guiding him forward. They reached a large stone plateau that overlooked a wide valley. The landscape stretched out below them, with mountains rising in the distance and rivers flowing through the green valleys. Lyra turned to Jason, her wings folding behind her. "Look at the sky," she said. "Close your eyes and feel the wind." Jason was skeptical, but he did as she asked. He shut his eyes and took a deep breath, letting the air fill his lungs. It was cool, carrying the scent of the distant trees and something floral he couldn't name. Slowly, he began to feel something he couldn't explain. It was like the wind was more than just air. It was alive, moving, guiding him. "I can feel it," Jason said, his voice almost a whisper. "The wind, it's like it's part of me." Lyra smiled, her eyes glowing softly in the dimming light. "Exactly. The wind connects us to everything. It moves through the world, carrying messages, changing the landscape. My people can feel it, use it to understand the flow of life." Jason opened his eyes, still feeling this strange connection. "But how do you use it?" Lyra tilted her head, considering the question. "It's not just about control. It's about listening. The wind tells us where to go, what's coming, and what is hidden. We use it to fly, yes, but we also use it to guide our decisions." Jason tried to understand, but he still felt like there was something missing. "So, how can I do what you do?" Lyra reached out and placed her hand on his shoulder. "You must trust the wind. Trust the air, and it will guide you." Her wings stretched out fully now, their edges catching the last rays of sunlight. She looked up at the sky, then back at him. "But you will need more than trust to learn this. You must learn to move with the wind, not fight it." Jason nodded slowly, feeling a sense of awe. "I'll try." Lyra smiled. "That's all I ask." Suddenly, the wind picked up, whipping around them, and Lyra lifted into the air. Jason watched, mesmerized, as she soared into the sky, her wings catching the wind effortlessly. It was beautiful, the way she seemed to merge with the wind, becoming one with the sky. Jason stood there for a long moment watching her. He couldn't help but feel a deep longing inside him. He didn't have wings, but maybe, just maybe, he could learn to listen to the wind like Lyra did. The sky had its own rhythm, its own song, and for the first time, Jason was beginning to hear it. Jason stood in the center of a quiet clearing, surrounded by the soft glow of Zarthia's twin moons. The last test was upon him, and he could feel the weight of it pressing down on his shoulders. He had already learned so much from the 4 alien girls: how to understand the water, connect through thoughts, and listen to the wind. But now, the time had come to face the most important lesson of all. Zilara appeared before him, her green eyes glowing with an inner light. She had been with him from the beginning, guiding him through each trial. Jason had grown fond of her, not just as a leader, but as a friend. She had been his anchor in this alien world, helping him understand his place among them. "You've done well, Jason," she said, her voice calm but filled with pride. "You've passed each of our tests. But now you must decide. The prophecy speaks of a choice, a decision that will shape the future of our worlds." Jason's heart raced. A choice. What kind of choice? He had already made so many decisions, so many sacrifices. But this felt different. This was about something far greater than just his survival. Zilara continued, her gaze never leaving his. "You have the power to unite our people, but it will not be easy. There are forces who do not want peace. There are those who will fight, who will resist. And there are those who will want you for themselves. Your decision will affect not just your future, but the future of all the beings on Zarthia." Jason felt a shiver run down his spine. He had always known that his presence on this planet was part of something bigger, but he had never fully understood the consequences. Now it was clear. His actions would shape the course of history. "What do I need to do?" Jason asked, his voice steady but filled with uncertainty. "How do I make this choice?" Zilara smiled gently. "The choice is not about what you can do, but who you are. You must decide if you want to remain here, to stay with us, and help build a future for our worlds. Or you can return home, to Earth, and leave us behind. But know this: if you leave, you will never be able to return. Our worlds are now bound together, and you are forever part of this story." Jason stared at her, the weight of her words sinking in. He had a life back on Earth, a family, friends, but he also had a deep connection with the girls, with Zarthia. He had seen their struggles, felt their hopes, and understood their fears. They needed him. And yet, his heart ached for his home, the place he had known his whole life. He looked at Zilara, then at the other girls, Valith, Serena, and Lyra, who were standing nearby, waiting for him to make his decision. They all shared the same hope in their eyes, the hope that he would choose to stay, to help them. Jason took a deep breath. He didn't know what the future would hold, but he knew that he couldn't turn his back on these people, on this world. The bond they had formed was too strong, too real. "I choose to stay," Jason said, his voice filled with resolve. "I will help you. I will fight for peace. I will help unite our worlds." Zilara's eyes softened with relief, and the other girls smiled, their faces lighting up with joy. The weight that had been on Jason's shoulders lifted, and for the first time since arriving on Zarthia, he felt a sense of belonging. The stars above seemed to shine brighter, as if the universe itself had accepted his choice. Jason knew this was just the beginning of a new journey, one filled with challenges and triumphs. But he was ready. For the first time in his life, he had found his true purpose. And with that, the future of Zarthia, Earth, and all the worlds in between was forever changed.